So the conversation around how designers are naturally thinking or how they're schooled to think, really it's about problem identification rather than just problem solving. So it's finding that lead domino and really trying to solve the right problem rather than just solving the problem that's immediately apparent or the one that's right in front of us. So, what's the inner essence of the problem? Or how can we go beyond the surface understanding to get a more deeply understood, shared understanding? And when I say surface understanding, I think about that understanding that exists across many disciplines. So, from a product owner's lens versus an engineer's lens or even a designer's lens, they're each going to have a kind of a natural way of understanding the problem based upon their own discipline. And many times the surface understanding doesn't take into account the unique context that we're in, so the business problems that we might be wanting to solve, or the unique issues that exist within each of our verticals. A shared understanding, on the other hand, really starts to get, again, back to that deeper inner essence of the problem. It takes a little bit longer, it takes a little bit more effort, yet it yields longer and more sustainable results. And many times this just happens through the regular conversations that we're having in these cross-disciplinary conversations that the design thinking process requires of us. So let's take a closer look at how we go beyond the surface to gain a shared understanding and really how we begin to unearth the problems that we want to fall in love with. This really isn't a natural way for teams to work. We start looking at problems and we look at solutions, and oftentimes we just make an assumption, well, this is the problem and this is the solution I have for that problem. In the next couple of minutes, we're going to talk about how do we unearth the right problem to solve. And then we'll get to the natural human need to solve that problem. But first, what is the right problem? How do we figure that out? And how do we determine that this is a problem worth solving and something that's going to be valuable to us? So one perspective that I always like to go back to when I think about problems and solutions is Einstein. This is a quote I go back to often. It was famously attributed to Einstein, and it's one where he says, if I were given 1 hour to save the planet, I would spend 59 minutes defining the problem and 1 minute resolving it. So the essence of what he's saying here is obviously to be thoughtful about how we go about approaching problems and how much time and energy we give to understanding the problem before jumping into the surface level understanding, which gives us oftentimes a knee-jerk solution. And you'll see this in software all the time. And not to say that fast following another company's lead is a bad idea, but where do you begin that fast following and where do you end it? So if I was going to create an image editing software, I probably wouldn't go out and try to replicate exactly what Adobe Photoshop has done successfully over many years. I'd want to understand my user segment, understand their problems, their pains, their goals, their needs, and design something specifically to match that. So the good doctor is telling us to first understand the problem, and this may seemingly take longer like we talked about, but in reality it saves a tremendous amount of time overall. And I think it's fair to point out that this is often where design gets a bad name inside a lot of larger organizations, inside a lot of enterprise organizations. Because the business is often looking for, the obvious things like the return on the investment, or they haven't seen a long history of demonstrated excellence in this approach. So they revert back to what they're familiar with and what they think is a safe approach. But what Einstein is telling us to do is we need to get from the unknown to the known. So really taking time to understand the problem set. And to understand that problem set, we need to have a mindset of this honesty around saying, you know what, I don't know. I may not know, but I do have the tools and a process to get me closer to confidence, to where we can know, and then we can move towards a solution. And really, that's a large portion of any experienced designer's job inside of any organization. It's helping shift the mindset to an area of comfort and saying, I'm not sure, but let's follow the process so that we can become sure.